Hello and welcome to My name is Anna, and today I want to begin with a question that might change the way you think about your English. What if you could move from where you are right now, maybe at a B1 or B2 level, all the way to C2 fluency? What if your English could become natural, confident, and advanced enough to fit any situation, whether it's a job interview, a business meeting, or even a casual chat with friends? Imagine speaking and people listening, not because they are trying to understand your English, but because your words sound smooth, precise, and impressive. Many learners feel stuck at the intermediate level. They know the basics. They can introduce themselves, share opinions, describe daily life, but something is missing. Their English feels simple. It works, but it doesn't sparkle. It doesn't have the rhythm, the richness, or the confidence of a truly advanced speaker. If this sounds familiar, don't worry, you are not alone. In fact, this is one of the most common struggles English learners face worldwide. So, how do you break through this wall? The answer is not memorizing endless grammar rules or repeating random vocabulary lists. The key is transformation, taking what you already know and then upgrading it, step by step, until your sentences sound powerful, colorful, and sophisticated. And that's exactly what we're going to do together today. Let's begin with something simple. At the B1 level, you might say, "I am tired today because I worked a lot." That sentence is correct. It communicates the idea, but it sounds flat. Now, let's upgrade it. At the C2 level, you could say, "I am exhausted after such a demanding day at work." Or, "I feel drained after handling so many challenging tasks today." Do you hear the difference? The meaning is the same, but the second versions carry more emotion, more depth, and more variety. This is your first exercise. I want you to take a basic sentence and make it advanced. Try this one. "The food was good." At the B1 level, that's fine. But at the C2 level, you could say, "The food was delicious," or "The meal was absolutely delightful," or even, "The flavors were exquisite, and every bite felt satisfying." Now it's your turn. Pause for a moment, repeat the examples after me, and then try to create your own advanced version. Let's try another one. The simple sentence is, "I don't like this movie." At a higher level, you could say, "This movie doesn't appeal to me," or "I found the storyline rather uninteresting," or "The film failed to capture my attention." Each version is still negative, but it sounds richer and closer to natural advanced English. Upgrading vocabulary is one way to move forward, but vocabulary alone is not enough. We also need to focus on connectors, the words and phrases that glue your ideas together and make your speech flow. At the B1 level, learners often rely on basic connectors like and, but, or because. These are fine, but they can make your sentences sound simple and repetitive. At the C2 level, you should aim to use more advanced connectors like although, nevertheless, moreover, consequently, or on the other hand. Let's practice. Take this simple sentence. "I wanted to go out, but it was raining." That's B1. Now let's upgrade it. "Although I wanted to go out, the heavy rain kept me indoors." Or, "I wanted to go out. Nevertheless, the weather forced me to stay inside." Notice how these versions sound more professional and fluent. Here's another practice. The B1 sentence is, "I stayed home because I was tired." Now, try these upgrades. "I decided to stay home since I was feeling exhausted," or "I remained at home, for fatigue had overwhelmed me by the end of the day." Each step adds more richness and variety. Now, let's address another challenge at the intermediate level: confidence. Many learners hesitate to use new words or advanced structures because they are afraid of making mistakes. But let me tell you, these mistakes are not a problem. They are part of the process. Every mistake you make is like a stepping stone that pushes you closer to fluency. If you never take risks, you will never grow. So, in this lesson, I want you to practice loudly, without fear, and embrace every mistake as progress. Let's do one more practical exercise together. Imagine you had a busy day. At the B1 level, you might say, "My day was busy." That's correct, but simple. At the advanced level, you could say, "My day was incredibly demanding, filled with non-stop activities." Or, "It was a hectic day packed with challenging tasks that required constant focus." Or, "Today was overwhelming with back-to-back responsibilities that left me little time to rest." Do you hear the difference? These advanced versions not only describe your day, they also create a picture and emotion for the listener. Finally, let's talk about rhythm and tone. Fluency is not just about words, it's also about how you deliver them. At the B1 level, many learners speak word by word, with pauses that break the flow. At the C2 level, you must learn to speak in chunks, linking words together smoothly. Instead of saying, "I went to the store," say, "I went to the store." And for advanced practice, "I went to the store to pick up some essentials before dinner." The rhythm is natural, and the sentence flows like music. So here's your homework from this chapter. First, take 5 basic sentences you already know, and write down advanced versions with stronger vocabulary. Second, record yourself speaking these sentences, paying attention to rhythm and tone. Third, practice using at least 3 advanced connectors in your daily conversations. If you repeat this consistently, you will feel your English moving forward, not just in accuracy, but in style, confidence, and power. Remember, the journey from B1 to C2 is not about being perfect. It's about progress, one step at a time. Every upgraded sentence, every new connector, every moment of shadowing practice brings you closer to sounding like the fluent, confident English speaker you want to become. Stay with me, because in the next chapter, we are going to dive deeper into advanced vocabulary synonyms, idioms, and collocations that will give your English a natural edge. But for now, practice these exercises, repeat them until they feel automatic, and remind yourself, fluency is not a dream. It's a skill you can build, and you are building it right now. When you move beyond grammar and sentence structure, one of the clearest signs of advanced fluency is your vocabulary. But vocabulary is not just about knowing more words. It's about choosing the right words, the precise words, the words that match the exact situation and feeling you want to express. This is what makes a speaker sound natural, sophisticated, and powerful. Let's begin with synonyms. At the intermediate level, learners often repeat the same simple word again and again. For example, the word happy. At the B1 level, you might only say, "I'm happy." That's correct, but it doesn't show depth. At the advanced level, you have choices. You can say, "I'm delighted," which expresses joy but with elegance. Or, "I'm thrilled," which shows excitement. Or, "I'm ecstatic," which means extremely happy, almost overwhelmed by positive feelings. You can even say, "I'm content," which expresses quiet satisfaction. Each of these words is connected to happy, but each one carries a slightly different shade of meaning. This is the power of synonyms. They allow you to paint with more colors. Instead of using the same dull brushstroke, you can choose the exact tone that fits your situation. Let's practice together. Imagine you just finished an exam and got a great score. You could say, "I'm thrilled with the result." If you got a gift from a friend that made you smile warmly, you might say, "I'm delighted." If you feel deeply satisfied after finishing a big project, you could say, "I'm content with what I achieved." Notice how each choice creates a different picture. Now it's your turn. Take the word angry. At B1, you would probably just say, "I'm angry." But at a higher level, you could say, "I'm annoyed," which means a little angry. Or, "I'm frustrated," which often means you're blocked or stuck. Or, "I'm outraged," which is very strong, used for unfair situations. Or, I'm furious, which is extremely angry, almost out of control. Try to repeat these words after me, then make your own sentences. Let's expand with another example, the word big. A B1 learner might always say, the house is big. At C2, you could say, the house is enormous, the building is massive, or the stadium is gigantic. Each word adds intensity. On the other side, instead of small, you could say tiny, compact, minute, or modest. Again, each has its own use. This brings us to an important point, building a habit of choosing synonyms depending on the context. Don't just memorize lists. Think about situations in your own life and ask yourself, how could I describe this more precisely? That is how vocabulary becomes alive. Now, let's move into idioms. Idioms are phrases that cannot be understood literally, but they make your English sound natural and close to native speech. At the B1 level, learners often use plain language. For example, they might say, I'm very tired. But an advanced speaker would say, I'm worn out, or I'm completely drained. These idiomatic expressions carry the same meaning, but they feel more authentic. Let's try another one. At the B1 level, you might say, it's easy. At the C2 level, you can say, it's a piece of cake. Both mean the same thing, but the idiom sounds more like something you would actually hear in daily life. Or instead of saying, I don't understand, you could say, I can't make sense of it. Idioms allow you to connect with real, everyday English, not just textbook English. Here are some common idioms you should practice. Over the moon, extremely happy. Example, I was over the moon when I heard the good news. Break the ice to make people feel comfortable in a new situation. Example, he told a joke to break the ice at the meeting. Hit the books to study hard. Example, I have to hit the books tonight because of the exam. Under the weather to feel sick. Example, I'm feeling under the weather today, so I'll stay home. Repeat them after me, and then create your own examples. The more you use idioms in real conversations, the more natural you will sound. Finally, let's talk about collocations. A collocation is a natural combination of words that native speakers use together. At the intermediate level, learners sometimes create phrases that are technically correct but unnatural. For example, you might say, do a decision. That's wrong. The correct collocation is make a decision. You don't say powerful coffee, you say strong coffee. These are small details, but they make a big difference in how natural you sound. Here are some essential collocations to remember. Make a decision. Take responsibility. Heavy rain. Crystal clear. Deeply concerned. Fast asleep. Strong argument. Catch a cold. Let's practice with sentences. Repeat after me. She made a quick decision after hearing the news. I take responsibility for my actions. The instructions were crystal clear, so everyone understood. I was deeply concerned about the situation. Now here's your exercise. I will give you a word, and I want you to find the right collocation. The word is rain. You should say heavy rain, not strong rain. Another one is sleep. You say fast asleep, not quick asleep. Another one, problem. You can say serious problem or major problem, but not big problem. Think carefully about these combinations. Collocations are powerful because they make your English smooth and automatic. When you use them, you don't just sound correct, you sound natural. So let's bring everything together with a short practice. I will give you a basic sentence, and you will transform it using synonyms, idioms, and collocations. The basic sentence is, I am very happy today because I passed my exam. Now, let's upgrade it. I am over the moon today because I passed my exam with flying colors. Or, I am absolutely delighted to have succeeded after so many hours of study. Or, I'm thrilled with my results, and I feel deeply satisfied with my effort. Each version shows richer vocabulary, idiomatic language, and stronger collocations. Here's another one. The basic sentence is, "The meeting was not good." You could say, "The meeting was disappointing," or "The discussion was rather unproductive," or "The session was frustrating because no clear decision was made." Notice how each version adds nuance. Now, it's your turn. Write 3 sentences about your day using synonyms. Then, rewrite those sentences using idioms. Finally, upgrade them with at least 1 collocation. This 3-step exercise will train your brain to think in layers and to naturally select advanced vocabulary. The more you practice synonyms, idioms, and collocations in your real life, the faster your English will transform. Every time you replace a basic word with a precise synonym, every time you use an idiom in the right situation, every time you choose the correct collocation, you are moving 1 step closer to C2 fluency. One of the biggest obstacles that holds learners back from advanced fluency is fear. Fear of using new words, fear of sounding wrong, fear of being judged. But the truth is simple. If you wait until you are perfect before you speak, you will never reach fluency. Confidence is not something that magically appears once you have learned enough vocabulary or mastered every grammar point. Confidence is something you build by using the language, even when you are not certain, even when you make mistakes. Think about this. Every time you use a new word, even if you use it incorrectly, you are teaching your brain to become familiar with it. You are training yourself to bring that word into your active vocabulary. And yes, maybe the first time you use it, it feels strange. Maybe you say it wrong. Maybe the person you are talking to corrects you. That is not failure. That is success. Why? Because you took the risk, you practiced, and now your brain will remember it better next time. I want you to imagine this. 2 learners are in the same situation. They both know the same amount of English. One is too afraid to speak, so they stay quiet. The other tries, makes mistakes, and learns from them. After 6 months, who do you think is more fluent? Of course, the one who practiced. Confidence is built through action. This brings us to a powerful skill that will keep your English flowing, even when you don't know or remember a word: paraphrasing. Paraphrasing means expressing the same idea in another way. It is the art of keeping the conversation alive without freezing or stopping. At the intermediate level, learners often get stuck when they forget a word. For example, you want to say restaurant, but the word disappears from your mind. A-B. One learner might stop, panic, and say nothing, but a C2 learner uses paraphrasing. Instead of giving up, they say, "The place where people go to eat food." Is it as short as restaurant? No. But it communicates the idea, and it keeps the conversation alive. That is the goal. Let's practice a few examples. Imagine you forget the word library. You can say, "The place where people borrow books." If you forget the word generous, you can say, "Someone who gives a lot and is very kind." If you forget the word expensive, you can say, "It costs a lot of money." Each of these phrases might be longer than the single word, but they allow you to keep speaking, and the more you do this, the more confident you become. Now, let's combine this with the idea of upgrading simple words. Instead of relying only on basic vocabulary, you can use paraphrasing to create more advanced expressions. For example, instead of saying, "The movie was good," you could say, "The movie kept me engaged from start to finish because of its powerful storyline." Instead of saying, "I'm sad," you could say, "I felt a heavy sense of disappointment after hearing the news." Do you see what happens? A simple idea becomes richer, more emotional, and more advanced. Here's a practice exercise. I will give you a basic sentence, and you will transform it using paraphrasing. The sentence is, "I like this book." That's B1. At the advanced level, you might say, "I really enjoyed reading this book because the author captured emotions so realistically. Or, I found the story deeply moving, it made me reflect on my own experiences. Notice how we didn't just use one word to replace like. We expanded the whole thought. Another example. The basic sentence is, I don't like this food. At a higher level, you could say, this dish doesn't appeal to my taste. Or, the flavor is not very pleasant to me. Or, the seasoning failed to match my preference. These are all ways to keep speaking and to show variety in your language. Now, let's talk about why paraphrasing is such a powerful tool for building confidence. First, it reduces the pressure to know every word. You don't have to stop the conversation just because one word is missing. Second, it trains your brain to think flexibly in English. You begin to see that there are many ways to express the same idea. And third, it pushes you to create longer, richer sentences, which is exactly what you need at the C2 level. Let's make this practical with a short training exercise. I will give you a list of words, and I want you to paraphrase each one as if you had forgotten it. Here are the words. Airport, try saying, the place where planes take off and land. Teacher, try, a person who helps students learn in school. Laptop, try, a small computer that you can carry with you. Friendship, try, the relationship between people who trust and care for each other. Holiday, try, a time when you don't work and you can relax or travel. Repeat these out loud, and then create your own examples. This exercise will help you develop the skill of explaining ideas in multiple ways. Now, let's push this further. Paraphrasing is not only about survival when you forget a word, it is also about style. Advanced speakers paraphrase to emphasize, to add nuance, and to connect with their audience. For example, instead of saying, he is very rich, you might say, he has more than enough wealth to live comfortably for the rest of his life. Instead of saying, she is nice, you could say, she has a warm personality that makes people feel comfortable instantly. These expanded versions not only keep the flow, they also make your English sound more advanced and engaging. Here's your second exercise. Take 5 simple adjectives: happy, sad, angry, big, small. For each one, write down 3 paraphrased sentences. Don't just replace the word. Describe the situation, the feeling, or the image behind the word. For example, instead of she is happy, you could write, she smiled with delight after hearing the news. Instead of the room is small, you could write, the room is compact but cozy, with enough space for everything I need. The more you do this, the more natural paraphrasing will become. Over time, you won't even think about it, you will just do it. And when that happens, your English will never freeze again. You will always have something to say. Finally, let's connect confidence and paraphrasing together. Confidence gives you the courage to try. Paraphrasing gives you the tool to keep going. When you combine them, you become unstoppable. You will no longer be afraid of difficult conversations. You will no longer stop speaking because of one forgotten word. Instead, you will find another path, another way, another expression. That is what makes a speaker sound fluent, natural, and advanced. So here is your challenge for today. In your next English conversation, make it your goal to use at least 2 new words that you've recently learned. Don't worry if you use them incorrectly. Just try. And if you forget a word, don't stop. Use paraphrasing. Explain it in another way. The more you practice this, the more confident you will become, and the faster your English will move from B1 or B2 towards C2 fluency. One of the most powerful tools that separates intermediate English from advanced English is the ability to use grammar flexibly. At the B1 level, learners often rely on simple tenses: present simple, past simple, and future simple. These tenses are important, but they do not allow you to express time with precision, nor do they give your sentences the richness and detail that advanced fluency requires. At the C2 level, you must be comfortable moving between complex tenses, shifting smoothly depending on the context, and using conditionals that allow you to describe possibilities, regrets, or imaginary scenarios. Let's begin with the past perfect tense. This tense is used to show that one action happened before another action in the past. At the intermediate level, many learners just use past simple for everything. For example, they might say, I ate dinner, then I went out. That is fine, but it doesn't show the sequence clearly. Now, let's upgrade it. I had eaten dinner before I went out. The past perfect shows clearly which action happened first. Here's another example. She left the party after he arrived. At the B1 level, that sentence is correct, but it could be confusing. Did she leave before or after he arrived? With past perfect, you can be precise. She had already left the party when he arrived. Now the meaning is crystal clear. Practice this. Take a daily routine you had yesterday and describe two actions using past perfect to show the order. Now let's move to the present perfect continuous. This tense is extremely useful for showing actions that started in the past and are still happening now, or actions that were happening for some time and recently stopped. For example, instead of saying, I study English, you can say, I have been studying English for the past 2 years. Do you feel the difference? The second sentence not only tells us about your study, but it shows the ongoing process, the effort, the continuity. Here's another example. Instead of, he is tired because he worked, you could say, he is tired because he has been working all day. This tense connects the past with the present in a way that sounds natural and advanced. Let's try one more. I have been waiting for you since morning. This shows not just the waiting, but the frustration of the time spent. Now, let's practice a short exercise. Describe something you have been doing recently. Maybe it's studying, exercising, or working on a project. Use the present perfect continuous to make it sound richer. For example, I have been reading a fascinating book that explores different cultures, or I have been practicing pronunciation exercises every evening to improve my fluency. Next, we need to address mixed conditionals. At the B1 level, learners usually know the first conditional. If it rains, I will stay home. They might also know the second conditional. If I had more money, I would travel. But advanced English requires you to go further. Mixed conditionals connect different times past, present, and future in one sentence. They allow you to express regrets, missed opportunities, or present results of past actions. For example, if I had studied harder last year, I would be at university now. Notice what's happening here. The first part refers to the past, and the second part refers to the present. Another example, if I hadn't missed the bus, I would be in the office already. The mistake happened in the past, but the result is in the present. Now, let's try a different type. If I were more confident, I would have spoken during the meeting yesterday. In this case, the first part refers to a present reality I am not confident. The second part refers to a past result I didn't speak. This combination gives you incredible flexibility. It allows you to explain yourself with nuance, to show both cause and effect across time. Here is a short practice. I will give you some situations, and you will create mixed conditional sentences. You didn't save enough money last year. Now you cannot buy a new car. Answer: if I had saved more money last year, I would be able to buy a car now. You are not tall enough. You didn't join the basketball team in school. Answer: if I were taller, I would have joined the basketball team in school. You didn't take the opportunity to study abroad. Today, you feel limited in your career. Answer: if I had studied abroad, I would have more career opportunities now. Practice these until they feel natural, and then make your own examples from your life. Now let's connect these tenses and conditionals with personal storytelling. Grammar is not about memorizing forms, it's about expressing life experiences more richly. For example, At the B1 level, you might say, I studied English last year. That is correct, but very basic. At the advanced level, you could say, I had been studying English for several months before I decided to take a professional course. Or, I have been studying English for the past 3 years, and during that time, I've discovered new confidence in my ability to communicate. These versions tell a fuller story. Let's try another one. Instead of, I was late, you could say, I had forgotten to set my alarm, so by the time I arrived, the meeting had already started. Instead of, I am learning English, you could say, I have been working on my English every day, focusing especially on my pronunciation and fluency. Each version adds depth, sequence, and emotional detail. Finally, let's combine grammar with imagination. Advanced fluency means not only describing what happened, but also exploring what could have happened. For example, if I had taken that job offer, my life would look completely different today. Or, if I were more patient, I would handle stressful situations better. Or, if I had been practicing daily, I would already be fluent. These are not just sentences, they are ways of showing maturity, reflection, and perspective. Here's your final exercise for this chapter. I want you to write 3 sentences using the past perfect to show sequence. Then write 3 sentences using the present perfect continuous to describe ongoing actions in your life. Finally, write 3 mixed conditionals to talk about regrets, possibilities, or hypothetical situations. Read them out loud, and notice how much more expressive and advanced your English becomes. When you learn to use these structures naturally, you no longer sound like you are reciting grammar rules. You sound like a storyteller, someone who can explain the past, describe the present, and imagine the future all with clarity and confidence. This is the real purpose of grammar, not to limit you, but to free you to express yourself fully. Once you can use tenses and conditionals with confidence, the next step toward advanced fluency is learning how to tell stories. Storytelling is not just about sharing information. It is about bringing your listener into your world, painting pictures with words, and making them feel what you felt. At the B1 level, learners often tell stories using short, flat sentences. For example, yesterday I went to the park. I met my friend, we talked. Then I went home. This is correct, but it is not engaging. At the advanced level, you must expand these simple sentences into narratives that carry detail, rhythm, and emotion. Let's start by adding time expressions. Instead of just saying, yesterday I went to the park, you could say, yesterday afternoon, when the sun was beginning to set, I decided to take a walk in the park near my house. Immediately, we have more context, more imagery. The listener can picture the time of day and the setting. Now let's add emotion. Instead of, I met my friend, you could say, I happened to meet an old friend I hadn't seen in years, and the moment I saw her, I felt an unexpected rush of happiness. This is not just an event, it is an experience. It shows how you felt, which makes the listener connect more deeply. Finally, let's add imagery. Instead of, we talked, you could say, we ended up sitting on a bench under the tall trees, talking for hours about everything that had happened in our lives, while the breeze carried the scent of fresh grass around us. Now the story comes alive. It is no longer a list of actions. It is a vivid description that your listener can see, hear, and almost smell. Let's practice upgrading another simple sentence. The basic version is, I cooked dinner last night. At the advanced level, you could say, last night, I prepared a warm, comforting dinner with fresh ingredients. And as I chopped the vegetables and stirred the pot, the aroma filled the entire kitchen. Another upgrade might be, after a long, exhausting day, I decided to cook a simple but delicious meal, and surprisingly, the process of cooking helped me relax and forget my stress. Notice how these versions use time, emotion, and imagery to transform the same simple idea into something engaging. Now, let's look at storytelling structure. A strong story often has three parts: the setting, the action, and the reflection. The setting gives the listener context where, when, and who. The action shows what happened, step by step. The reflection adds meaning, why it mattered, how you felt, or what you learned. This reflection is especially important at the advanced level because it makes your story more than just a series of events. For example, a B1 story might be, last week I traveled to another city. I saw many interesting places. I enjoyed the trip. But a C2 story might be, last week I traveled to a city I had never visited before. From the moment I arrived, I was fascinated by the mix of old and new narrow streets, filled with history, and the modern cafes buzzing with energy. One evening, while I was walking through the city center, I heard a street musician playing the violin. The music was so beautiful that it stopped me in my tracks. In that moment, I felt grateful for the chance to experience something so simple yet so moving. Do you see the difference? The second version tells the same story, but it has setting, action, and reflection. It feels alive. Now let's practice. I will give you a basic story, and then I will show you how to upgrade it. Basic version: I studied for the exam. It was difficult. I passed. Upgraded version: for weeks, I had been preparing for the exam, staying up late and reviewing my notes until my eyes felt heavy. On the day of the test, the atmosphere in the classroom was tense, and every student seemed nervous. The exam itself was challenging, but when I finally saw my results, I felt an enormous sense of relief and accomplishment. All of the effort had been worth it. Your exercise: take one of your own experience, maybe a trip, a celebration, or a challenge, and try to tell it first in 3 basic sentences. Then, expand it into a full story with setting, action, and reflection. Another way to make your storytelling more advanced is to use descriptive language. At the B1 level, learners often use simple adjectives: good, bad, nice, interesting. At the advanced level, replace them with richer descriptions. Instead of, the movie was good, you might say, the movie was captivating, with a storyline that held my attention from beginning to end. Instead of, the weather was bad, you could say, the weather was gloomy and unpredictable, with dark clouds rolling in and sudden bursts of rain. These kinds of descriptions allow your listener to feel what you felt. Let's try another example. The simple sentence, my room is small. Upgraded versions: my room is compact but cozy, with warm light and just enough space for everything I need. Or, though the room is modest in size, it feels inviting because of its simple design and comfortable atmosphere. Notice how the advanced sentences are not only longer, they also create an image, a feeling. Now, let's practice a quick exercise with you. I will give you 3 simple sentences, and you will try to expand each one. I went shopping. Add time, detail, and emotion. The book was interesting. Add imagery and reflection. I met a friend. Add setting, feeling, and conversation details. By practicing this regularly, you will train your brain to move beyond basic reporting and into real storytelling. Another important part of storytelling is rhythm. At the B1 level, many learners speak in short, choppy sentences. But at the C2 level, you need to connect your sentences together, vary the length, and use transitions to guide the listener. Instead of saying, I woke up, I ate breakfast. I went to work, you could say, I woke up earlier than usual, had a quick breakfast, and then rushed to work, hoping I wouldn't be late for my meeting. The rhythm is smoother, and the story flows naturally. To practice this, take any daily routine and try telling it in one long, connected sentence with transitions like after, while, as soon as, by the time, or before. For example, after finishing my coffee, I quickly gathered my notes, and by the time I left the house, the streets were already filled with people rushing to work. This type of practice helps you move away from robotic sentences into fluent storytelling. Finally, remember that storytelling is not about using big words to impress people. It is about connection. The best stories are not necessarily about dramatic events. They are about making ordinary experiences feel meaningful through detail, emotion, and imagery. A simple walk in the park, a casual dinner, a conversation with a friend, all of these can become powerful stories if you tell them with the right balance of description and reflection. So here's your challenge. Every day, choose one simple event from your life and try to retell it in English as a story. Use time expressions, emotions, and imagery. Upgrade your sentences with descriptive language. Add reflection to explain why it mattered, and practice speaking it out loud until it flows naturally. If you do this daily, you will not only improve your grammar and vocabulary, you will also become a storyteller, a communicator who can hold attention, create emotion, and inspire with words. Once you are comfortable telling stories with detail and description, the next step toward advanced fluency is learning how to share your opinions clearly and respectfully. Speaking English at a high level is not only about describing what happened, it is about contributing ideas, showing perspective, and sometimes disagreeing in a polite, logical way. This skill is essential for professional discussions, academic debates, and even everyday conversations with friends. At the B1 level, learners often use very simple phrases like "I think" or "I like." While these are correct, they can sound repetitive and basic. At the C2 level, you should expand your opinion toolbox. For example, instead of only saying "I think," you can say, "In my opinion," "From my perspective," "As far as I am concerned," "To me." I would argue that each of these expressions shows a slightly different tone. "In my opinion" sounds neutral and formal. "From my perspective" suggests personal experience, and I would argue that is often used in debates or formal writing. Let's practice them in sentences. In my opinion, daily practice is more effective than long study sessions once a week. From my perspective, traveling is one of the best ways to learn a language. As far as I am concerned, vocabulary building should always go hand in hand with grammar. I would argue that listening is just as important as speaking for fluency. Repeat these after me and imagine yourself using them in real discussions. The more variety you use, the more confident and advanced you will sound. Now, let's move to disagreement. At the B1 level, learners often say things too directly, such as "I don't agree" or "You are wrong." While this is clear, it can sound rude or harsh. At higher levels, English speakers usually soften disagreement to keep the conversation polite and professional. Here are some useful phrases. "I see your point, but I'm not entirely convinced." "That's an interesting perspective, however, I look at it differently." "I understand where you're coming from, though I don't completely agree." "You raise a valid concern, but I believe there may be another solution." Let's practice with an example. Imagine someone says, "The best way to learn English is just to memorize vocabulary lists." At a simple level, you might respond, "No, that's wrong." But at an advanced level, you could say, "I see your point about vocabulary being important, but I'm not entirely convinced it's the best method. From my perspective, combining vocabulary with speaking practice leads to much faster progress." Notice how this response shows respect while still giving your own view. Another important element of advanced opinions is discourse markers, phrases that help structure your ideas and make them flow logically. At the B1 level, learners often use basic connectors like "and," "but," "and," "because." At the C2 level, you should use a wider range. Firstly, secondly, finally, to organize points. On the one hand, on the other hand, to show contrast. Nevertheless, nonetheless, however, to balance ideas. In fact, actually, as a matter of fact, to add emphasis. All things considered, in conclusion, to summarize. Let's see how discourse markers can make your opinion sound more professional. Compare these two versions. Basic version: I like online classes. They are easy, they save time. Advanced version: firstly, I enjoy online classes because they are convenient. Secondly, they save a great deal of time compared to commuting. On the other hand, they sometimes lack personal interaction, which can be a disadvantage. All things considered, I believe online classes are an excellent option if combined with real conversation practice. Do you hear the difference? The second version is not only longer, it is more organized, logical, and persuasive. That is the power of discourse markers. Let's do a short exercise. I'll give you a topic, and you will try to build a structured opinion using discourse markers. The topic is technology good for education? Here's one model answer. In my opinion, technology has transformed education in a positive way. Firstly, it provides access to information anytime and anywhere. Secondly, it allows students to learn at their own pace with personalized tools. On the other hand, relying too much on technology can reduce face-to-face interaction. Nevertheless, if used wisely, technology can make education more effective and inclusive. Now it's your turn. Choose a topic you care about, maybe travel, food, work, or study, and try to express your opinion in at least 3 points. Use markers like firstly, on the other hand, and nevertheless. Speak it out loud and listen to yourself. Does your opinion sound more professional? Another advanced technique is combining agreement with disagreement in the same sentence. For example, I agree that practice is important, although I also believe guidance from a teacher makes the process faster. While I see the value of grammar drills, I think real conversations are even more effective. Although technology can sometimes distract students, it generally brings more benefits than problems. These kinds of sentences show balance. They make you sound thoughtful and flexible, not extreme or rigid. Finally, remember that expressing opinions and disagreements is not about winning an argument, it is about communicating with respect, logic, and clarity. The more you practice giving structured opinions, using polite disagreement, and adding discourse markers, the more natural it will become. Start small. Take one everyday topic and share your opinion with a friend, or even with yourself in the mirror. Each time, try to expand your response with new expressions and markers. Over time, you will develop the confidence and fluency to handle any discussion in English, whether it's casual, academic, or professional. Once you can express opinions and disagreements clearly, the next step is to deepen your control over vocabulary and advanced expressions. At the highest levels of fluency, words are not just tools for communication, they are instruments for precision, emotion, and persuasion. Let's start by exploring emotional and abstract vocabulary, then move on to advanced comparisons, and finally practice emphasis with inversion and cleft sentences. At the B1 level, learners often rely on simple emotional words, such as happy, sad, angry, or tired. These are correct but too general. At the advanced level, you need to select words that capture intensity and nuance. For example, instead of sad, you might say disheartened, which suggests losing motivation, or heartbroken, which describes deep emotional pain. Instead of angry, you could use frustrated when the anger comes from obstacles, or outraged when the anger is intense and directed at unfairness. Instead of tired, you might say exhausted, drained, or worn out. Each choice communicates a slightly different feeling. Let's practice in sentences. I felt disheartened after failing the test, despite studying so hard. The unfair decision left the entire team completely outraged. After a long week of non-stop meetings, I was utterly drained. These words carry power. They help your listener feel the intensity of your emotions instead of just understanding the surface meaning. Now, let's explore abstract vocabulary. At the B1 level, learners talk about concrete ideas: food, travel, school, friends. At the C2 level, you must also discuss concepts like responsibility, freedom, identity, or growth. These words allow you to express opinions about life, society, and personal development. For example, I believe taking responsibility for our actions is the foundation of true success. For me, learning English is a form of freedom because it allows me to connect with people across cultures. Traveling abroad gave me a stronger sense of identity and helped me understand who I am. These abstract terms expand your range of topics. They allow you to speak not just about events, but about the meaning behind them. Next, let's practice advanced comparisons. At the B1 level, you might say, "This book is better than that one." At the advanced level, you can express comparisons with much more variety and precision. Useful structures include not nearly as, far more, nothing like, just as, significantly better, worse. For example, the new system is far more efficient than the old one. The film was not nearly as exciting as the trailer suggested. The experience was nothing like what I had expected. It was much more challenging. Her performance was just as impressive as the professional actors on stage. Now compare these two versions. Basic: this city is big. It is better than my hometown. Advanced: this city is far more vibrant and dynamic than my hometown, though it is not nearly as peaceful. Life here is nothing like the quiet routine I grew up with. Notice how the advanced version shows shades of meaning, not just one direct comparison. Finally, let's move to emphasis on area where advanced English truly shines. Sometimes you want to stress a particular idea, not just with words, but with structure. Two powerful tools for this are inversion and cleft sentences. Inversion means changing the usual word order for dramatic effect. Instead of saying, "I have never been so inspired," you say, "Never have I been so inspired." The meaning is the same, but the emphasis is stronger. Other examples include, rarely do we realize how much progress we have made until we look back. Only after failing several times did he finally succeed. Seldom have I felt such a deep sense of satisfaction. Each of these sentences highlights the emotion or situation in a way that captures attention. Cleft sentences are another method to emphasize part of a sentence. The structure often begins with what or it is. For example, basic: I enjoy the conversation. Advanced: what I really enjoy is the conversation. Basic: her determination inspired me. Advanced: it was her determination that inspired me. Cleft sentences focus the listener's attention. Let's try more examples. What surprised me most was how quickly I adapted to the new environment. It is consistency that leads to long-term fluency, not short bursts of practice. What I admire about her is her ability to stay calm under pressure. Let's put everything together in a short practice exercise. Imagine you are talking about learning English. Basic version: I was happy with my progress. The new method is better than the old one. I enjoy speaking with native speakers. Advanced version: I was absolutely delighted with my progress, because for me, learning English represents a kind of freedom to connect globally. The new method is far more effective than the old one. It is nothing like the boring drills I used before. Never have I been so inspired to keep improving. And what I really enjoy is speaking with native speakers, because each conversation feels like a window into a new world. Notice how the advanced version uses emotional vocabulary, abstract terms, comparisons, inversion, and cleft sentences to create a powerful impression. Your challenge: take one simple experience from your life, such as learning a skill, traveling, or meeting someone new. First, tell the story in basic sentences. Then, Rewrite it using at least 2 advanced emotion words, 1 abstract concept, 1 advanced comparison, and 1 cleft sentence. Speak it aloud, repeat it several times, and notice how much more fluent and natural you sound. After mastering advanced vocabulary and expressions, the next skill that distinguishes a truly fluent speaker is the ability to adjust your language depending on context. In English, this skill is called register the level of formality or style you use in communication. Knowing how to shift between informal, neutral, and formal registers allows you to communicate naturally with friends, professionally at work, and respectfully in academic or official situations. At the B1 level, learners often use the same words and tone everywhere. For example, someone might say to a professor, "Hey, what's up?" Or to a friend, "Good morning, it's a pleasure to meet you." While both sentences are correct, they sound awkward if used in the wrong situation. At the advanced level, you must learn to read the context and choose the right style. Let's explore 3 main registers. 1. Informal, casual, friendly. Used with close friends, family, or people of the same age group. Examples: "Hey, wanna grab a coffee? That movie was awesome. I can't believe how late we stayed up last night." 2. Neutral, polite, but not overly formal. Used in everyday situations like speaking to colleagues, acquaintances, or strangers in public. Examples: "Would you like to have lunch together? That movie was really enjoyable. We stayed up quite late last night." 3. Formal, professional, academic, official. Used in workplaces, job interviews, presentations, or when speaking to people of higher authority. Examples: "It would be a pleasure to discuss this further over lunch. The film was an excellent production, both in terms of acting and direction. We remained awake until a rather late hour last night." The ability to switch between these registers shows maturity in communication. Let's practice. Imagine you want to invite someone to dinner. In informal English, you might say, "Hey, wanna grab dinner tonight?" In neutral English, "Would you like to have dinner this evening?" And in formal English, "I would be delighted if you could join me for dinner this evening." Each sentence carries the same meaning, but the tone changes depending on context. Now, let's focus on politeness in making requests. At the B1 level, many learners use direct commands, "Give me the book," or "Close the window." While these are clear, they can sound rude. At the C2 level, you need to soften requests to show respect. Here are some useful structures. Would you mind? Would you mind closing the window? I was wondering if you could help me with this task. Could you please send me the file by tomorrow? Would it be possible for us to reschedule the meeting? Each of these makes your request sound polite, professional, and considerate. Let's practice by upgrading some direct requests. Basic: open the door. Polite: would you mind opening the door for me? Basic: send me the report. Polite: could you please send me the report when you have time? Basic: help me with this problem. Polite: I was wondering if you might be able to help me with this problem. Notice how the polite versions make the listener feel respected. This is especially important in work environments, classrooms, or international communication. Now let's move to formal vocabulary, which is often used in professional or academic settings. Instead of everyday words, you must learn more formal alternatives. Basic: look at formal. Evaluate, analyze. Basic: think about formal. Reflect on, consider. Basic: say no. Formal: decline, turn down. Basic: get better. Formal: improve, enhance. Basic: need, formal, require, necessitate. Let's use them in sentences. Informal: we need to look at the data before deciding. Formal: we must evaluate the data carefully before reaching a decision. Informal: I need to think about this problem more. Formal, I need to reflect on this matter before drawing any conclusions. Informal, he said no to the job offer. Formal, he declined the offer after careful consideration. Practicing these substitutions will make your English sound polished and professional in situations where formality is expected. Another important point is tone in disagreement. In casual settings with friends, you might say, "No way, that's not true." In a professional context, however, you should soften your language. "I understand your perspective. However, I would evaluate the situation differently." The words you choose signal not only your fluency, but also your cultural awareness. Let's practice upgrading informal disagreement into formal, polite disagreement. Informal, "You're wrong." Formal, "I'm not entirely convinced by that argument." Informal, "That's a bad idea." Formal, "I believe this approach may present significant challenges." Informal, "I don't like it." Formal, "I would prefer an alternative approach." Now, let's connect everything with a real-life scenario. Imagine you are at work, and you want to reschedule a meeting. At an informal level, you might say to a close colleague, "Hey, can we move the meeting?" At a neutral level, you could say, "Would it be possible to reschedule the meeting?" And in a formal context, for example, writing to your manager, "I was wondering if we might be able to reschedule the meeting at a more convenient time." Notice how the choice of words changes with the situation. Here's another practice. I will give you one everyday request, and you will try to express it in 3 registers: informal, neutral, and formal. The request is, "Help me with this presentation." Examples. Informal, "Hey, can you give me a hand with this presentation?" Neutral, "Could you help me prepare this presentation?" Formal, "I would greatly appreciate your assistance in preparing this presentation." By practicing this exercise with different situations, ordering food, asking for directions, giving opinions, you will train yourself to adjust naturally. Finally, remember that politeness and register are not about sounding artificial. They are about showing awareness, respect, and flexibility. The more you practice switching between registers, the more confident and professional you will sound in any context, whether chatting with friends, negotiating at work, or presenting in front of an international audience. After mastering register and politeness, the next step is learning how to make your English not only correct, but also persuasive and memorable. At the highest levels of fluency, advanced speakers use rhetorical tools to hold attention, structure arguments, and inspire their listeners. These techniques include rhetorical questions, parallelism for rhythm, and structured argumentation with clear signposting. Let's begin with rhetorical questions. A rhetorical question is not asked to get an answer, but to make your listener think, to emphasize a point, or to engage their attention. At the B1 level, learners often make direct statements. Technology changes our lives quickly. At the advanced level, you can turn this into a rhetorical question. Isn't it fascinating how quickly technology changes our lives? The meaning is the same, but the effect is more powerful. Other examples include, don't we all wish we had more time to do the things we love? Isn't it amazing how small daily habits can completely transform your fluency? Who wouldn't want to sound more confident when speaking English? Rhetorical questions create a conversation with your audience, even when you are the only one speaking. They make your language more dynamic and persuasive. Practice by taking one of your opinions and reshaping it as a rhetorical question. Instead of saying, "Learning English opens opportunities," try, "Can you imagine how many opportunities learning English can open for you?" Now, let's move on to parallelism. This is the technique of repeating similar structures to create rhythm and emphasis. Parallelism makes your speech more memorable because the repetition stays in the listener's mind. For example, practice builds confidence, practice builds fluency, practice builds success. She was determined to win, determined to succeed, and determined to never give up. We need patience, we need persistence, and we need passion. Parallelism works because of rhythm. It gives your words a flow that feels almost musical. Think about famous speeches. Many of them use parallelism to inspire. Let's practice with an everyday example. Instead of saying, "Reading helps me improve vocabulary, grammar, and creativity," you could say, "Reading expands my vocabulary, strengthens my grammar, and develops my creativity." The parallel verbs expands, strengthens, develops make the sentence smoother and stronger. Try creating your own examples. Take one simple idea and repeat it in 3 parallel forms. For instance, daily practice improves my memory, daily practice sharpens my focus, and daily practice increases my confidence. When you speak like this, you sound persuasive and professional. Finally, let's explore structured argumentation. At the B1 level, learners often present opinions in random order. "I like online learning. It's convenient, it saves time, but it can be boring." This is understandable, but it lacks structure. At the advanced level, you should organize your ideas using clear signposting. Firstly, secondly, finally, or to begin with, in addition, in conclusion. This creates a logical flow that guides your listener. For example, firstly, online learning is convenient because you can study from anywhere. Secondly, it saves time since there is no need to travel. Finally, it offers flexibility, allowing you to learn at your own pace. Notice how the structure makes the argument easy to follow. You can also use discourse markers like "on the one hand," "on the other hand" to show contrast, or "all things considered" to summarize. These markers give your speech clarity and balance. Let's practice together with a more advanced topic. Why is daily practice essential for learning English? Here's one possible answer. Firstly, daily practice helps you build consistency, which is the key to long-term improvement. Secondly, it strengthens your memory because repetition makes vocabulary and grammar stick. Finally, it develops fluency since speaking or writing every day forces you to think in English naturally. All things considered, daily practice is not just useful, it is the foundation of real progress. Compare that to the simple version. Daily practice is important. It helps me remember and speak better. Both are true, but the structured version is clearer, more persuasive, and more advanced. Now, let's combine all 3 techniques: rhetorical questions, parallelism, and structured arguments into one example. Imagine you are giving advice to someone who feels unmotivated. Isn't it true that every skill we have ever mastered came from practice? Isn't it the same with English? Practice builds vocabulary. Practice builds fluency. Practice builds confidence. Firstly, if you practice daily, you will strengthen your memory. Secondly, you will feel more confident using new words. Finally, you will create a habit that keeps your motivation alive. So ask yourself, if practice leads to fluency, why wait another day to start? This short passage uses all 3 tools. It asks rhetorical questions to involve the listener, uses parallelism for rhythm, and organizes the argument with clear steps. This is how advanced English becomes not just communication, but persuasion. Here's an exercise for you. Choose one topic you care about, maybe learning languages, healthy living, or personal goals. First, write down 3 simple reasons why it's important. Then, expand them into a structured argument using firstly, secondly, finally. Next, turn one of your statements into a rhetorical question. Finally, create one line of parallelism using 3 repeated structures. Read your paragraph aloud and notice how much stronger it sounds compared to your original version. Remember, persuasive language is not only for speeches or debates. You can use it in job interviews, presentations, meetings, and even casual conversations when you want to inspire or motivate. The more you practice rhetorical questions, parallel structures, and signposting, the more confident and impactful your English will become. Now that you've practiced rhetorical questions, parallelism, and structured arguments, the next challenge is applying all of these skills in real-life situations. Moving from study to real communication is what truly transforms your English from classroom knowledge into living fluency. At the C2 level, you must be able to use everything vocabulary, grammar, idioms, storytelling, persuasion, politeness, and rhythm in real conversations, presentations, and interviews. Let's begin with real-life conversations. In everyday discussions, you will often combine multiple skills. Imagine a friend asks you, "How has your English improved recently?" A simple B1 answer might be, "I practice every day, my English is better." At the C2 level, you could say, "Over the past few months, I've committed to daily practice, and as a result, I feel far more confident in conversations. What I really enjoy is the freedom it gives me to connect with people from different cultures." This answer uses advanced grammar, cleft sentences, and emotional vocabulary, all in one fluent response. Now, consider a workplace conversation. Suppose your colleague suggests an idea you don't agree with. At the B1 level, you might respond, "I don't like that idea." At the C2 level, you could say, "I see your point, but I'm not entirely convinced. From my perspective, we might achieve better results by evaluating alternative strategies." This polite yet structured answer shows respect while guiding the discussion forward. Next, let's look at presentations. At work or school, presentations are a true test of fluency. You must not only explain your ideas, but also keep your audience engaged. At the advanced level, combine rhetorical devices, persuasive markers, and smooth register changes. For example, imagine you are presenting on why daily English practice matters. Isn't it true that consistency is the secret behind every skill we've mastered? Firstly, daily practice builds memory. Secondly, it strengthens fluency by making English automatic. Finally, it keeps motivation alive. Practice builds vocabulary. Practice builds confidence. Practice builds success. This short section demonstrates rhetorical questions, structured argumentation, and parallelism all in one. It not only informs but inspires. Another real-life context is the job interview. At the B1 level, you might say, "I want this job because I like English." At the C2 level, you could say, "I am genuinely motivated to contribute to this position because it allows me to use my communication skills and problem-solving abilities in a meaningful way. As far as I am concerned, this role aligns perfectly with my long-term goal of becoming a professional educator." Notice how this answer uses formal register, precise vocabulary, and advanced structures to sound polished and persuasive. Beyond professional situations, you also need to use advanced English to describe goals, emotions, and personal stories. At the C2 level, you should be able to go beyond simple statements and create vivid, reflective responses. Let's practice with goals. Basic: I want to be fluent. Advanced: my ultimate goal is to achieve C2 fluency so that I can participate in international discussions with clarity and confidence. For me, English represents freedom, the ability to connect with people across the world, to access knowledge, and to share my own perspective without barriers or emotions. Basic: I was happy. Advanced: I was absolutely overjoyed when I realized I could follow an entire conversation with native speakers without hesitation. It felt like a turning point in my journey, and it gave me fresh motivation to keep moving forward. And for personal stories: basic: I studied hard and passed my exam. Advanced: after months of late-night study sessions, when I finally saw the exam results, I felt a wave of relief and pride. Never have I been so inspired to continue pushing myself further. These examples combine emotional vocabulary, abstract concepts, inversion, and reflection. They show not just what happened, but why it mattered. To build these skills, one of the most effective methods is shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a native speaker and repeating exactly what they say, copying the rhythm, intonation, and flow. It's not just about repeating words, it's about training your mouth and your brain to speak in natural patterns. Imagine listening to a podcast or a short speech. Instead of only understanding, you follow along, speaking in real time. At first, it feels challenging, but with persistence, it builds fluency like nothing else. Another key practice is expanding vocabulary daily. At C2, it's not enough to know one word, you must know multiple synonyms, idioms, and collocations to express shades of meaning. For example, instead of always saying important, you should also use essential, crucial, vital, indispensable. Each carries a slightly different weight. Instead of saying angry, you can choose frustrated, outraged, or irritated, depending on context. Make it a habit to learn 3 to 5 new words every day and immediately use them in sentences. Now, let's connect all these skills in one real-life role-play. Imagine you are at an international conference, introducing yourself. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason, and I come from the United States. For me, English has always been more than a language, it's a bridge to new opportunities and connections. Over the years, I've learned that persistence is the real secret to fluency. Daily practice, shadowing, and expanding vocabulary have helped me grow step by step. What inspires me most is the idea that every small effort adds up. Isn't it true that consistent practice is what transforms learners into confident speakers? From my perspective, fluency is not just about speaking correctly, it's about communicating with clarity, emotion, and authenticity. This short speech uses cleft sentences, rhetorical questions, emotional vocabulary, and reflection. It feels natural, persuasive, and professional. Finally, let's talk about motivation. The journey from B1 to C2 is not short. It requires patience, persistence, and daily practice. But every small step counts. Each time you shadow a sentence, each time you learn a new idiom, each time you push yourself to paraphrase instead of staying silent, you are building toward fluency. Think of it this way. Fluency is not one big achievement, it is the result of thousands of small actions. Isn't it inspiring to know that every word you practice brings you closer to your goal? Don't you feel motivated when you realize that C2 speakers were once beginners who simply refused to give up? Remember, C2 is not perfection, it is confidence, clarity, and authenticity. It is the ability to express yourself in any context, from casual conversation to professional debate. And the truth is, you already have the tools. The only difference between where you are now and where you want to be is consistent practice. So, commit to small daily steps. Use shadowing to train rhythm. Expand your vocabulary with synonyms and idioms. Tell your stories with imagery and reflection. Express opinions politely but firmly. Build arguments with structure and rhythm. And above all, stay motivated. Because fluency is not a dream, it is a journey, and every step you take brings you closer to your destination. And that is why every small step matters. Fluency is not a sudden leap, it is a journey built from persistence, practice, and belief in yourself. If today's lesson has inspired you, I would love for you to continue this journey with me. I'm Anna. If you found value in today's practice, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support not only helps this community grow, but also motivates me to keep bringing you lessons that guide you closer to true fluency. Together, we can keep building step by step until English becomes not just something you study, but a voice you own.